Sorry.
Great. That's my new ringtone.
Oh,
All right.
me.
All right. Let's get ready to rumble. Here at the Royal Gossip Podcast, in the red corner, weighing in at... Oh, no, let's not do that.
Let's not do that.
No,
Not
okay,
today.
let's move on from that. Right, we're not going to get into a big brawl here over the whole Megxit issue.
Don't even call it Megxit.
Oh, am I not... Uh-oh. This is going to go really bad. Welcome to the show, dear listener.
And how are you, Lord Joe?
I am fantastic.
Excellent. Good to hear.
Good. I'm enjoying the end of the world. How about you?
Oh, look, it's fabulous. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else other than right here, right now.
Absolutely. So, let's dive in.
Absolutely.
Right, I guess the big headline for the family this week is that all the royal residences and the Queen's galleries are all reopened to the public. So we've gone back to full safety measures, of course, with masks and... Well, masks, I guess, and keeping distances from each other.
Sanitising everything.
Yes. So that includes Windsor Castle, but I guess the Queen's gearing up to go to Scotland, so she's getting ready for the progress, airing out her tartans and...
Yes, and, sanitising everything along the way, I guess.
Brushing her sporrans. Oh, I don't think ladies wear a sporran, do they?
No,
Okay,
that's just,
right.
well, not publicly. We don't talk about that publicly.
Right, yeah, of course. Just going through the roundup, the Queen, big news for her this week was the unveiling of this new portrait for the Foreign Office, which was revealed on a call she had with the Foreign Office regarding the pandemic. And, Kate, I don't know whether you've had a chance to have thoughts about the portrait, but I certainly have a couple.
Well, yes, seeing that I saw the portrait about 5 minutes ago and thought it was... Well, look, let's go with your thoughts first.
Oh, really? Yes, because a couple of things leap out at me. And, again, with all due respect, I know the Queen is a bosomly lady.
Oh, isn't she just?
And nothing wrong with that. We celebrate big bosoms here at the Royal Gossip
right,
Podcast.
Yes, Joe's sporting a C cup as we speak.
All right, well, that was not necessary. Okay. You're still the winner by a long shot.
Well, that's true, yes.
They seem to really draw the eye in this portrait.
Oh, they do.
With all due respect.
They follow you around the room no matter where you look.
Oh, my God. And I can't imagine... Look, if I was the Foreign Office, I would have gone back to the artist and said, look, there's been some confusion here. This portrait was commissioned for the Foreign Office, not Jugs magazine. Could you please tone it down a little?
Yes. I mean, look, kudos to the dressmaker who's obviously had to do some very clever engineering here. And, of course, to whoever makes her brassieres, it's certainly a feat of entertainment. And if poor lady's anything like me, she always gets stopped going through customs if she forgets to take off her bra and put on a wire-free one. There's always the...
When the Queen goes through customs and they frisk her?
Well, I suspect they probably don't frisk her, or as happened to me when I was in Dubai, that the lady in the burqa, who I suspect knew several kinds of Middle Eastern martial arts, pulled me aside and checked me down, frisked me in a little booth off to the side because of the amount of underwire in my bra, and my lady parts certainly aren't as generous as the Queen's.
As ample, no.
Ample, thank you.
And I noticed, I think the problem is, in all seriousness, she's wearing a monochromatic flat colour. Because I noticed on the call with the Foreign Office, she was wearing what she usually wears, which is a floral dress. And a pattern will break up that big sort of shelf area visually.
Yes, as someone who's just recently purchased a well-known branded silk caftan, I won't do any name dropping here, but they put lots of patterns over things to draw your eyes away from the problem areas, and lots of swirly bits so your eye naturally travels. But this is just one sort of flat blue screen.
Yeah, I mean, there were many portraits done of the late King of blessed memory, but I don't recall anywhere I thought I might see his nipples. I mean, this is...
And you, God knows you've
and
tried.
God knows I've looked.
Yes.
No, and again, no disrespect, but it is, I don't know, it really does seem to draw the eye a bit. I mean, when you think about it, again, the Queen Mary, of blessed memory and all due respect, she also had huge knockers. But she would wear...
It's a technical term,
yes,
is it, Joe?
Exactly.
Yes.
It's a medical condition. But she would wear, upwards of 9 diamond necklaces. So it was kind of like, a solar eclipse. If you look directly at it, you'd be blinded.
See, the thing that I have a problem with, as far as the Queen's couture goes, is that it's very unimaginative to have a very solid black shoe with every outfit. And I get that she's a very practical woman, that she likes her shoes, but and from a particular shoemaker or a cord swainer, I think is the old age term for it. But black is a very difficult colour to match with other things. We think that it goes well with stuff, but black and white look great together. Black and cream look great together. When you start pairing black with a colour, it cheapens both of them. So she would have been better off going for a navy shoe with this. And I don't understand why her shoemaker can't make shoes in other colours for her. Is she worried about scuff marks?
I'm wondering whether it's about the bag, because does she only ever have the black bag?
Does she carry that, though? I thought oftentimes her ladies-in-waiting carried that.
No, oddly, she seems to only carry it when she's at home in her own house.
Yes, when she was making the Christmas puds. That was very weird.
Very strange. Seems to be a bit of a security talisman for her.
Look, it's a very sensible dress, though, as Trini and Susanna remarked many years ago when they still had their show that was a success. This princess line dress is actually incredibly difficult to wear well. And they pulled one of these dresses out. This exact style, in fact, slightly longer, in a cream, on 50 size 16 women. And it fit exactly one woman. Same dress made up. Now, I appreciate that the Queen has her own private dressmaker and that would be fitted very well. But this portrait really demonstrates why it's not a forgiving dress. And it's a uniform, but it's not flattering. And those shoes in a better colour.
I mean, I like the royal portraits of old. I wouldn't mind if we took a bit more license and she was,
absolutely.
astride a rampant horse with a sword aloft or something like that.
Or standing on, a la the Ditchley portrait, standing on some massive piece of land.
And
yes.
They should redo all of the Elizabeth I portraits, holding a rainbow and all of that stuff.
Yeah, the serpent outfit. So the dress with the eyes and the ears and the lips on it. But yeah, this is a bit... And expression on her face is the eyes, a bit weird to me.
But yeah, I would have gone back to them and said, I think you need to tone down the gazongas a bit. This is really... We wanted something that said stately monarch, not I loved you as the matron in the Carry On movies. But...
And I am concerned about the rose... I'm just seeing them for the first time. The rose petals falling at the side there. Like, what is that indicative of? Is that...
I feel like...
Things are wilting?
I know that purple is imperial, but I feel like purple roses has a bad connotation.
Well, they're very difficult to grow. I know that much. They've got an incredible scent on them and they are beautiful and they are rare, but they are very difficult and they need the right fertiliser, constant watering.
Don't we all?
Yes. So I'm sorry, my nerdy gardening side, which is very rare. You have to believe me, listeners. But yes, I'm interested what's the depiction going on with the three fallen... Is that representative of Meghan, Harry and Archie at the side there? What's going on?
Oh, that they've fallen to the wayside?
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry, we'll get there.
All right.
So that was the big news with the Queen. Prince Charles is busy counting butterflies because, of course, he is. Well, in England, there is...
Sorry, that was just...
Oh, sorry.
Uncle Dickie.
Yeah, hang on.
Uncle Dickie.
Kate's false teeth have fallen out. I dropped my wig and keys. Let me just... regain that.
Let's start that again. So, tell me, what's happening with Uncle Charles this week?
This is all staying in. There's a thing in England that's basically an ecological study called the Big Butterfly Count, where people volunteer and they pick a certain area and they count and identify the butterflies in that area, basically as a...
Sounds like a job for Sesame Street.
Yes, some sort of metric of how things are going. So, of course, the Prince was busy doing that at Highgrove. Because one of the coolest things he's done at Highgrove there is, it used to be all expansive lawns, which is all well and good. But right at the front of the house, he's turned that into like a wildflower meadow, which is absolutely lovely. And it's full of bees and butterflies and educated fleas. So...
Is that for Camilla to ponce around
I don't know. I don't think they go out and roll around in it. But yes, I now picture him there lurking in the bushes, butterfly spotting. So that's what he was busy with. But the Duchess herself was actually extremely busy.
What was she doing?
Well, she went to an engagement at the National Gallery, which I believe is basically just to demonstrate that the National Gallery is open again and pleased to come to it.
Yes.
And she
For those of you who don't know, that's just off Charing Cross Station at Trafalgar Square. where they have the fourth plinth, which oftentimes has up-and-coming artists doing up-and-coming weird things. So,
oh, really? Avant-garde?
Well, very avant-garde. So they had a quadruple, now I can't remember whether she was an amputee or she was born legless and armless, but a pregnant woman up on the plinth when I was there several years ago. It was quite a controversial piece. And yes, there's always interesting things there. So I think it's called the fourth plinth.
Right, well, I love a good plinth.
Left-hand side towards the performance space at Trafalgar Square there.
And the big news, of course, was that the Duchess wore a mask. So she wore a fairly famous pattern, the peacock pattern, which is from the British brand Fiona Clare. Looked quite good to have sort of a pattern mask against a flat-coloured dress. So she was sort of repping the whole mask situation. Although the staff at the gallery didn't have masks on so much as they had those, now I'm acting something out on the radio, but they had that face shield that's basically
the
like
full
a
PPE stuff,
a welder's mask, only clear.
Yes.
But without the seal round the nose and the mouth, I'm like, that's doing nothing.
I would, so it was interesting that one of my friends, shout out to Eileen on the podcast, Eileen was having this argument with one of her friends who was trying to say that that's as good as a mask, and people were saying, well, where's your research on that?
Surely not. I mean, it's airborne. It's going to sneak up and out from under that visor, basically.
The virus goes in 360 directions. It's not like they go, oh, there's something in front of me, so I can't go anywhere.
No, I mean, I understand that the mask helps to whatever degree it does, but in terms of the visor, I mean, the virus can turn corners.
Yes, well, I'm assuming that they put it on with the idea that, like medical staff who wear it, but the medical staff wear it to protect the protection gear that they've got underneath that. So if someone sneezes in their general direction, it sort of cuts down a percentage of it. But I am surprised. I wonder, did they release a statement as to why they just wore that? Or
No, I just basically saw them ushering the Duchess around and the guy was standing right next to her with this clear visor on. And I thought, well, that's doing nothing. But she had the mask on, so well done to her. Typical of her, she walked all the way from Clarence House. I say all the way, it's not very far. But for her to walk the streets with no fanfare and causing no carbon footprint, good for her, and then just simply walk back home again.
Oh, so she just carted over by her servants, was she?
She walked the whole way in the street, which I suppose if people don't know ahead of time, it's not like there's any security risk. By the time anyone knows you're there, it's past. So
I'm trying to remember exactly where Clarence House is. I'm sure I've walked past that because I've walked up and down those streets so many times in the last couple of decades.
In relation to each other, but it can't have been far as she walked.
No. Well, I do it, and, I'm probably only a few years younger than her.
No, it's outrageous. You're young and beautiful like me.
Oh, well, good on you, Camilla.
Yeah, absolutely. And she also visited Boots Chemists, which is another one of her initiatives, is safe spaces for people fleeing domestic violence.
Oh,
so
so
they've created a safe space that's basically a place to go to. Mm. And also, it's horrible that this happens, but they created the Wash Bag Project, where they donate like a bag of toiletries to clients who come into the Sexual Assault Referral Centre. Mm-hmm. And again, good on Camilla, because she tackles these subjects that aren't easy to talk about and are no fun.
No, and not a particularly glamorous topic to talk about.
No. And I did see the figures of how many people have used the safe space and how many wash bags they've put out, and I'm telling you, it was very depressing.
Oh, really?
So I thought, let's not even get into that. But
okay. Well, there was a expectation that quarantine and lockdown would see those domestic violence figures exponentially increase.
Yeah. And apparently, I don't know whether this is a rise or is business as usual, but that's the thing, these charities are hard work, because last night I found myself sort of thinking these charities are a real bummer. Mm. Like, a lot of them are not a fun topic, but it's obviously a really great service. So that was a busy week for the Duchess. And Princess Anne obviously was gearing up for her TV special, which aired last night in the UK, but I haven't had a chance to see it yet.
Apparently she is the hardest working royal of all of them.
Oh yeah, she's definitely the hardest working woman in showbiz. And the special was entitled very imaginatively, "And the Princess Royal at 70.
Wow.
Which sums it up.
I was going to say, that took a lot of thought.
I mean, God bless her, she does a great job, but I can't imagine there's anything too riveting in this special.
Well, no, I suppose that's the hard thing, being Anne and not being the glamour puss that some of the other royals have been, and not being interested in that, and goodness knows why should she have to? I mean, why should you have to? Looks like some regal, front cover dolly to be in the royal family and work hard. I mean, she's there to make a genuine contribution, so it's interesting for me. I've always found her sort of an enigmatic character. She, married again when she was unhappy and chose not to have titles for her children. So she obviously has found that a struggle in her own life, but she's never been one to really cave to any of the other things that have befallen members of the royal family. She's just got in there and worked.
No, worked harder than anyone and paid her own way this whole time.
Yes.
So, I mean, she's really above reproach there. But again, I say God love her, but I can't imagine the interview with her or Sir Admiral Tim are very riveting. Can you imagine if Admiral Tim was like, actually, we're swingers? And she's very liberal with the whip.
I'd watch that.
There's not
if
going to
only
be,
for the car crash value.
Yeah, there's not going to be any bombshells coming out of that special, I'm sure.
Well, you mean apart from the fact that Zara and Peter have a sibling. Peter is the name of her brother.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, have a sibling in New Zealand, the horse riding.
Oh, by her father.
First Mark.
By their father.
Captain Mark Phillips.
Yes, Captain Mark Phillips.
That's right, yes. Yeah. He had an affair with a New Zealand horse botherer. I'm not sure what the people who walk horses out. And,
oh, yes.
Yes. Because those of you who aren't in New Zealand may not know this, that every time I visited New Zealand for the last 10 years, I can be guaranteed that she is going to, as in Zara, is going to be on the front cover of one, if not all of the magazines over there. She is their poster girl. They're very much into the royal family over there, and they do toasts.
Her because of the equestrian angle, I guess.
Yes. And I think that Mark, before he was caught out, he and Anne went over there, and of course they do have, there is a member of the royal family who married a Maori man, and I can't remember their names, but they are in line for the throne, but they now live in New Zealand.
No, I don't know about that.
Yeah, they were actually at Meghan and Harry's wedding, and I can't remember his name, but he was a married man who'd had a child previously, and it's one of the distant cousins.
Oh.
So, yes, we'll find that out and get back to you.
Yes. Table that one, Senator.
Yes.
It's a question without notice. And the other thing Princess Anne was busy with this month was being guest editor of Country Life magazine, the official magazine.
You really have to emphasise that first syllable.
Listen, the official magazine of Boring Old Farts. So that was very on brand for her.
But royal members of the families of the royal... yes, members of the royal family don't guest edit magazines. I mean, God, what was going to happen?
Bugger it, I walked into that one.
You have walked into that one.
Well, it's...
Is it because it's a boring magazine that it's okay to be a guest editor?
Shut up is why.
And it begins.
Moving on. Prince William is still pushing his Heads Up campaign for mental health for men, which is very important. He did a podcast with some famous footballers, and it was a footballing podcast. I listened to it, and I had
you were very confused?
I had no idea who anyone was or what any of them were talking about. But he is very natural and a really normal person, easy to talk to, and that was fun. And look, he pushes a really good message that if you can get into the football community and have it be okay to say to a mate, "Are you all right?" and not be a source for derision for doing that is really important, because it is extremely serious. I was reading some of the literature, and one of the good points they made is, women, for all their challenges, usually have a support structure or at least one friend they can talk to. And they said in a lot of cases, the first indication people have of a man having any mental issues is he's killed himself. And that was such a shocking statement, but it's true. These guys feel like they can't even speak to someone or admit there is a problem, and that really has to change.
Well, it has to, and it's going to be institutional and generational, and, both sides of us have to do it. People often say, toxic masculinity is the reason that men can't talk about these things, but that's also something women absorb when they sort of raise children and say, man up, or don't cry. People don't want to see a young man crying. We are very repressive in a lot of these Western countries, particularly Australia and England. I know it's like, be a lad, you can have a bit of fun, but, don't let the world see you're unhappy,
Yeah.
And therapy is basically, having a drink, throwing a football around and throwing something at the TV. So, yeah, good on William for recognising that this is an issue and, talking to a group that will listen, I think, and want to
yes.
people to listen to them. So,
and they were talking about how they have renamed the FA Cup, the big football cup, the Heads Up FA Cup.
Oh.
I didn't realise that William is actually the president of the Football Association.
Has the man ever played a game of football?
Yes, he plays very badly by his own estimation.
Okay, all right.
But he has played, yeah. But he actually said as an adult he's become more interested in football, and he was saying, it's something that comes to define the weekend, having the football on, and when there's no football and you're stuck at home every day and there's no sort of sense of weekend, that it becomes very, as we all have, the pandemic's quite a Groundhog's Day of...
Well, yes, so I feel like that dowager from Downton Abbey. What is a weekend?
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
There are a few interesting things from the podcast, but he did mention that he and Kate are working as a tag team during lockdown to homeschool the kids. He admitted that his wife has super patience and that lockdown was a bit of an awakening. And I think that's definitely the case for a lot of men who realise that when I arrive home, the kids are bathed and ready for bed and tuck it out, that you don't realise there's been 8 hours of an absolute madhouse go on while you were at work.
I can't even imagine what it would be like with 3 young children who, for all that's reported, are actually quite intelligent and eager to learn and have been encouraged in that to be quite curious about things, for them to be sort of locked away and not having, like all of us in every aspect of society, not having any guarantee of what tomorrow will bring or an understanding of what tomorrow is going to bring. I mean, I know with my own child that it's been incredibly difficult trying to say we just don't know. No one knows.
No, indeed.
And, if your grandmother or your great-grandmother is the Queen of England, you'd sort of have a sense that, well, she'll restore things to some sort of normalcy, and when that doesn't happen, it's very hard to explain that to young children. And,
well, listen, you're going to have difficulty explaining it to me, because I feel like these things have become a never-ending piece of string at this point, that we don't know if and when what normalcy will return.
We have Ned Ryerson running across the street going, "Hey, remember me?"
Remember me, Needle-Nosed Ned? Yes, and look, one of the other guys that was just on the podcast sort of summed it up when he said, at the beginning of the pandemic, I thought this is an opportunity to slow down and spend some time with my family, and I'm over that now.
Aren't we all?
I think we've had enough quality time to last us all for quite some time. But the Duchess took time out of her busy schedule of being the greatest mother in the world to kick a few goals of her own.
You mean apart from, eating a rice crusket, running for 6 hours,
Listen,
and then laying down?
You're body shaming, which is off-brand for you.
I'm not body shaming. I'm just saying that's what she does. She eats a crusket.
I know. She is dreadfully thin. I can't dispute that. The Royal Foundation of the Duke and Duchess has granted nearly £2 million to 10 leading charities at the heart of mental health and frontline support. So she met with representatives from both emergency responders and mental health counsellors, which was great just to give them a boost in terms of getting them out there as a charity that needs supporting and is very important. And as we say, with the lockdown and everything that's happened, mental health has been brought to the forefront because this has put everyone under a pressure that wasn't there before.
Oh, absolutely. And you don't have that opportunity. Sometimes they say when things are a little bit tough, just get up and go for a walk around the block. And seriously, in some parts of the world and in Melbourne, in fact, you can't even leave your own building. You can't leave your floor. You can't get into an elevator to go out and do that walk around the block because there's a cordon of police around the outside of your building preventing you from doing so. So that whole idea of just getting out, getting some fresh air and sunshine is not available to the majority of the world at the moment.
No, at a certain point it's like a legally enforced depression because all the things you say, well, just do this, you go, well, I can't do that.
No, exactly right.
So that was fantastic. That kept the Duchess busy during the week as well as being an awesome wife, mother, and, as always, an inspiration to us all.
Oh, can you hear that leak? There seems to be air escaping around here.
Listen, we need to do a whole special on her because I don't understand the derision of someone who has never put a foot wrong and is obviously trying very hard.
Never wears underpants. She doesn't. Haven't you seen her out and about? I can show you 5 photographs where the wind's blown up and she's not wearing underwear.
What?
Yeah, she doesn't wear underwear. She doesn't wear her skirts down. I can show you the photos. It's a lovely butt, listeners, if you haven't seen it. It is.
Oh, I feel like I maybe might have glimpsed some buttocks. Right. Prince Edward.
I love me some Prince Edward. What's he been up to?
He virtually visited Hope Support Services, who support young people when a family member has been diagnosed with a life-threatening illness. So again, not a thrilling topic, but young people need support if someone in the family. I mean, it's a time where you don't have time to support your child, but they also need to talk to someone and often need to vent to someone. So that's a really great organisation, and he met with young leaders and volunteers from there. And I sort of watched a bit of the Zoom call, and he really is such a nice guy. You can tell he's really listening.
Yeah.
And, gets into a real engagement with people. So he really does a great job.
I've always got the impression from him and Sophie that they are genuine nice people who want to help.
Yeah.
And I guess when you're that far down in terms of the sovereign line, you've got a little bit more freedom, and he could have gone, in any direction, could have gone badly with it, but he has, been a hard worker and supports Sophie.
Yeah, and as you say, being so far down the line, they could get away with doing not much, where they don't. They're really out there, him and Sophie particularly, having hard conversations, talking to people who have life-threatening illnesses and their families and difficult subjects so graciously, because it's not easy. Those aren't fun lunches,
No, it's this idea that a member of the royal family rocks up and gets a free lunch to, promote a charity. If that was ever a true story, which I don't think it ever was, it's hard-earned, and, hats off to anyone who can do that. It would be very wearing, I would imagine.
So, is there anyone else we need to cover?
Oh, well, do we know anything about Beatrice's honeymoon? Did she go away on honeymoon?
Yes, apparently they have snuck away to France, and good for them.
Oh, lovely.
No details on what they want, but you wouldn't want any. I mean, for God's sake, leave them alone.
Yeah,
so
let them have some privacy. But it's nice to know that they get a bit of a break away from things.
Yes.
And, of course, it is summer over there, so they'd be able to indulge in a bit of swimming and a little bit of frivolity out in the sun, which we are sadly lacking in Australia at the moment.
Yes.
Because Joe and I, being the sun bunnies that we are, we just can't wait for swimsuit weather.
No, exactly. I haven't been able to do my ski boarding.
Yeah, the surf.
I was going to say waterboarding, but I don't want to do that.
No. What's that other thing that they do? The surf cheerleading?
Windsurfing? We're very outdoorsy. Anyway.
Wind skating, I think it is.
Yes. Very big into that. Harry and Meghan have topped the guest list for Brooklyn Beckham's wedding.
What?
Yes. Brooklyn Beckham is getting married.
To who?
I don't know. And I don't care.
Well, now I have to go and search that because this is the first that I'm hearing about it. He's just is he old enough to get married?
Oh, look, time flies. And if you saw, William did another conference call with footballers, and if you see the startling state of Beck's face...
Oh, don't you say
I'm afraid so. I think he's had a bit of Botox. He's aged somewhat.
Of course. Oh, so he's getting married to Nicola Peltz.
Never heard of her.
She's a 21-year-old model and photographer who... No, I'm sorry, that was Brooklyn that I'm talking about. Hang on. So
yeah, it's Brooklyn that's getting married.
Yes, so the 21-year-old model and photographer, who is the son of retired footballer David Beckham and former Spice Girl Victoria Beckham, I think we all knew that, will be tying the knot with 25-year-old American actress Nicola Peltz. They've only been dating for 8 months.
Uh-oh.
Well, fortunately, none of us have ever been married at such a young age, having only known someone for such a short period of time.
No, that would certainly, in hindsight, turn out to be not the greatest idea.
Oh, my goodness me. Okay, well, I don't even know what show she's in, so...
No, never heard of her.
Never heard of her. Okay, well, I'm sure we will when the next round of news cycle comes up.
And, of course, the other big news with Meghan and Harry is their petty book attacking the family and causing even more damage.
They have not contributed to that book. Both of the reporters involved in that have said that they got no information from Meghan and Harry for that book.
No. They only have friends of Meghan and Harry who they interviewed, who Meghan and Harry are still allowing into their inner circle to demonstrate to all involved that this was an approved process.
But weren't you just telling me the other week that Meghan has no friends from her previous life, that you got rid of all of them? So how can both things be true? If they've known them long enough to comment on their wedding 3 years ago, how can they still be involved in their life, Joe, if Meghan is getting rid of everybody?
Listen, I'm not a good arguer. That's not the point here. I'm not on trial. But I think that leads us pretty much into our main topic, which is, what are we calling the Megxit? If we're not calling it that.
Oh, there was another phrase that I heard going around, and I can't remember what it was. It was something a bit nicer than Megxit, but I'm just going to have a look that up, dear listeners.
Because it wasn't an abdication. It was more like a firing in the end, because I think they planned to be half in, half out, and didn't expect to be as cut off as they have been. But I guess I'll go into my State of the Meg address, and then you can explain to me why I'm wrong.
Okay.
So I'll start out with the part that I'm already wrong about.
Okay.
Because I've been cancelled by my lovely sister, who explained to me that I'm a horse's ass, in not those terms. So basically, I had this feeling that, number one, the initial criticism of Meghan, I don't even know what it is. That she's quote-unquote a bitch, or I don't understand what valid criticism of her was made.
No, I think, look, I was on the fence, I'll be honest, when when she first sort of came on the scene. I was sort of on the fence about her because I hadn't really known too much about her. I was in the midst of some postgraduate study and had let my all my access to all these various websites dissipate, and I couldn't see that there was anything that was actually wrong about her. I mean, apart from the fact that English people, and I apologise to the English people in the podcast, I am a son of son. I am the daughter of English migrants. Oh, I nearly let that one out of the bag. That I'm undercover.
We nearly went. You flash back to when you were Ken.
Yes. My mother's family is English, so there has always been a kind of antipathy towards absolute hatred towards American women coming into the American family, so the royal family, because of...
you think that they considered her a Wally Simpson 2.0?
Yes, well, there are... I won't name the site directly because I don't want to give them any audience members, but there is a Twitter site called something with Wally in there referencing the Duchess because they think that she is the new Wallace Simpson. But the only crimes that I can see that, alleged crimes, was that she was divorced and that she was American. And nobody can fault her on her, no one can genuinely fault her on her charity work, and that's been going on long before she even met Harry. So everybody who's been involved with her talks about the fact that she doesn't want to come straight in at the top of something. She asks to start at the bottom and work her way up so that she can understand every aspect of how an organisation works. So she does have a very prestigious pedigree in terms of the amount of charity work she's done over the years. And before she met Harry and she had the TIG website, there's lots of photographs of her turning every dinner party into a fundraiser. So I don't understand. There are certainly discussions everywhere, and you can look for them if you're interested, but there are a group of people, and I don't even know if they have a collective name, but I know that the ones who support the Sussexes are called the Sussex Squad. So if you hashtag Sussex Squad, you'll find them. But there are a lot of people of a certain age, which would be 50 plus, who saw the boys go through losing their mother and imagined that both of them would marry English roses and continue on that sort of tradition of, being good English boys, marrying good English girls and continuing that kind of work. So I think there was a dismantling of that princess narrative when he went abroad and found someone else. And I think, I've always thought that the boys should have been able to make a choice about who they wanted to be with, and
of course.
And I honestly think that, in the early days I was quite supportive of William and Catherine because I thought that he was making a decision based on choosing someone outside the family who was a hard worker. I've had my doubts about that recently, but Harry proved time and time again he wasn't interested in someone who was a shallow party princess. He wanted someone who was hardworking and someone who'd, faced a lot of battles and overcome them. And I think I just think it's an incredible loss that the media have just come after her so strongly when I can't see... I would really have to struggle to find something that Meghan's done poorly. There's a lot of things that people say that she's done, but there's absolutely no proof. I have, apart from the discussion that Joe and I had about the outfit that she wore for the Trooping of the Colours, which was a bit 80s, I have to admit, that pink off-the-shoulder frock. But people got upset about her wedding dress, saying it was too plain. And I'm sorry, but what did you think that the wife of the second in line to the throne should be wearing? Something sort of ornate and poofy? It was, as some people have remarked, it was her second wedding, and I thought it was just very elegant, very simple. And I'm not saying that because my own mother married in exactly the same dress.
Oh, really?
Yes. I just felt it was entirely appropriate to not draw attention to yourself in a overly done frock. I mean, if you are going to be Queen of England, absolutely, I think go all out, handmade lace, hand-woven silk, that's absolutely acceptable, I think, for the Queen. But if you're going to be the wife of the second in line in the front throne, I think a subtle, stylish, classic dress that's not over the top, not demanding that you go, oh, wow, look at me, that is perfectly appropriate, especially, for an older bride too. I mean, we're not trying to mince words here. She certainly looks beautiful, but she was in her late 30s, and it's not appropriate to getting around in a meringue dress at a certain age.
No, well, indeed.
Speaking as someone who was in a meringue dress for at least 2 of her weddings.
Well, I'm going to stop it now. You've made me feel awkward. I want to take this one off.
But, look, I get that there are people who don't like her, but when you try to... I've had conversations, lots and lots of conversations with people online and in the real world. No one can actually tell you why they don't like her without referencing something they've read, exclusively referencing something that they've read in a newspaper. The reality is that none of us know her, none of us know what's true, and none of us know what's false. But I haven't seen anything from people who actually know her who are willing to go on record to say that there's anything terrible about her. I mean, her half-sister... has never lived with her and barely knows her, and there's a lot of anger there because they were contacted shortly before the wedding to say that Meghan would no longer be paying a stipend to her father once she got married, and that's where everything went downhill, because the rumour is that Thomas Markle Sr. was paying a percentage of that to Samantha to keep her going, and neither of them have appreciated being taken off the family payroll. But, I mean, what could Harry do? I mean, you can't continue to keep funding members of the family who are actually getting a fairly decent pension. So I would be very interested, Joe. What are your reasons for not being on board with Meghan?
Well, you're going to be very shocked because in a minute I'm going to explain that I am.
Oh, you are?
Well, you say she's done nothing wrong, this Meghan, if that is her real name, because I have looked at a serious news source called Twitter. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, Twitter. Yes.
And I found out that she is an evil enchantress who lures naive ginger boys away from their families to her cabin in the woods.
Oh, well, see, look, I'm all turned around now. I mean, the Twitter people.
I know. Obviously, this Twitter thing is absolutely crazy. What percentage of the Twitter stuff was just racists?
Oh, well, I've been fascinated because I was on Twitter before Meghan even came onto the scene, and I don't recall ever seeing as many or any Cambridge supporters until Meghan came along. It was almost as though we've got this false dichotomy that, well, if people are supporting Meghan, we've got to come out and support whoever we see as the opposite of that, which is the Cambridges. It was very weird to me that suddenly there were all these American women of a certain age, my age, in case anyone thinks I'm age shaving, women of a certain age who suddenly loved William and Catherine and always had, and thought that she was the perfect queen. And
I mean, we joke about that you're team one or the other, but that has become a real sort of thing, hasn't it?
Yeah, and look, I think the pressure on both women is terrible. I think it's just unforgivable, and I think, listeners, Joe and I have had many a discussion about this, but I do think that if your argument is that you put up and shut up and don't say anything, which is a very crude way of establishing what the royal thing has been, you don't juxtapose that about an image of a chimpanzee being led from the hospital and saying Meghan and Harry are taking Archie home, and to the BBC reporter who did that, very happy you were fired, I hope you never work again, you asshole. And then you say, well, the Royal Palace came out and did nothing about that, but they were happy to issue a statement that said that Catherine didn't wear hair extensions and that she didn't have Botox. So this is very weird dynamic going on in the palace, that they were constantly cutting down stories that presented her in a mildly negative light and then did nothing about all the various ones that came out about Meghan.
And I think this comes to the crux of what I was wrong about. And it was just a feeling, but I had this idea of Meghan that what she had done wrong was initially nothing, and that all this criticism of her was basically just racists and whack jobs on Twitter. But obviously it extends to people whose job is to do journalism to also feed into that. But I guess what I felt was, why would you let the bullies get to you? Why would you let them know that they're getting to you? Now they think they've won. I had this whole sort of feeling that if someone's attacking you on a racist, sexist, homophobic or whatever sort of level, I would say, oh, this is the rantings of a crazy person that has no reflection on me, and why would I give it any oxygen?
Yes.
And I started to see her as someone who was, in a sense, letting the bullies win or letting them feel like they've won. And I was basically saying that to my sister, and she said, don't say that. And now I've said it. But the point is, she convinced me why that was wrong, because she really nailed it when she said, if a gang of bikies moved in next door to your house, would you stay there to prove a point with your family in danger, or would you just get out?
Exactly.
And I went, oh, everything I've just said in the last 45 minutes is total bollocks, and I need to redress all of that. So I still feel like it galls me to think that these people feel like they've succeeded in bullying her out.
Yes. But they're still not happy about that. They're still going on. And it's like, well, what more do you people want? You've chased her out of the country. Piers Morgan was saying to her, if you don't like it, Meghan, go back to where you came from. Which, let's not even get into all the racial crap that's going on with that statement. But the fact that she left and he was like still whinging, and it's like, I even very rarely engage with that man because I think he's a total wanker. I just said, Piers, I tagged him, I said, you've got what you wanted. And I referenced his previous message. It's like, she's left. What more do you want? Aren't you happy now? She's left. But, you know, it just proves that all they wanted was someone to kick and continually kick. And, you know, from where I look at it, if it was just about her, and that's, you know, kudos to Camilla, because Camilla, as you said, the...
ludicrous attacks.
Yeah, ludicrous attacks. I mean, not to the level that Meghan's had to endure.
Different nature of thing.
You know, for 10 years before people finally came around. But she didn't have a newborn baby.
No.
And do you really want to be in a situation where you are constantly having to shield your child from the dreadful things that are being said about, and they are truly dreadful. I'm not even going to entertain half the things that have been said.
I was going to get some quotes, and then I thought, what am I even doing? This is making me feel sick.
Yeah. And, you know, as I was saying, I said to Joe that as I was walking up the stairs to the studio today that I won't forgive you for having to make me re-engage with that dreadful Samantha Markle, because she really is just the most narcissistic piece of work. That you could sell a sibling down for 7 pieces of silver. And I did follow her for about a good 3 years, and it's just the most vile hatred. It comes from a place of hate and mental disorder of a level that, you know, is inexcusable. Yeah. To justify, that I'm not well. And in fact, Samantha always says that she's the most mentally healthy out of all of her family, but then
I think, excluding Meghan, maybe that's true, because there's a lot of issues going on there. But I think we'll go to town on the Markles another day, because that's a whole episode unto itself. Yeah.
But I think, you know, as a mother myself, and this is one of these things that people hate hearing, but it does change the way, if you have, let's put it a different way, if you have a small and helpless person in your life and it is up to you to protect them, you will do anything that you can. So whether it's a niece or a nephew or a grandchild or, you know, a student in your care who's, you know, and you have the power to do something, you do it. And I just think that as awful as it is that they've had to go, I've run the scenario through my head so many times, and I don't think they had 10 years, because, I mean, there were, you know, those 2 boys that got jailed. Well, I say boys, they were men, they were old enough to be jailed. The people who threatened to kill Harry because he was a traitor to the white race for marrying a woman who was part African American. And that's what these newspapers did. They were unrelenting on Meghan while she was pregnant, and they could have induced a miscarriage. And I honestly think that some of them, that's what they wanted. Because
if you're under a great deal of stress when pregnant, that's absolutely not good for the baby or you, right?
And I think that's part of where that ridiculous story came out, that she was carrying around a latex stomach, despite there being film footage of the baby actually moving while she was in public underneath her dress. There are people saying that she was using a surrogate, because they had to be able to justify how awful they were being to a pregnant woman by saying she's not really pregnant. None of any of this has proof. They've produced doctored photographs, clearly doctored photographs, and say, oh, Meghan wasn't, pregnant in this photograph, and it was a photograph taken 2 years ago in New York, and, all that sort of ludicrous thing. So I think that there's just a lot of very sick people out there with a lot of anger issues and a lot of stuff that they need to address. And I think if you're not going to take the opportunity now to reflect on what kind of person you are, if you're going to carry on like this, then there's never going to be a better time for you to do it.
No. Well, in terms of the actual details of I keep going to say Megxit anyway, I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, no, that'll do for the moment.
Obviously, their announcement was out of the blue to the powers that be.
But funnily enough, not to the Sussex squad. If you go back and do a historical search, at the time they were saying, and I was part of it back then, they were saying, oh, I bet any money they don't come back from Canada. That was the general scuttlebutt because they'd been gone for so long and people thought that it's unsustainable. You can't have a child in this environment. And so it wasn't a surprise to any of us that she was not coming back.
Right. But I feel like the nature of it was basically they ripped the Band-Aid off so that the firm was forced to go, well, it's out there now.
Yes.
Because the way Harry characterised it, number one, and people gloss over, that he said, I have made this decision for my family, that a lot of people lay it entirely on Meghan that this was some scheme that she came up with.
Ah, well, it's that Malaysian risotto that she made that we read about.
Ah, yes.
One of the better conspiracy theories, if you search witchcraft and Malaysian risotto, very weird. But still, where there was a Malaysian woman, or allegedly a Malaysian woman, saying...
Can you be allegedly Malaysian? I don't think that's a crime.
Well, she was saying she was a Malaysian woman and talking about Malaysian witchcraft with risotto made from rice that had been steamed between her thighs. Okay,
well, I regret this line of questioning.
And it would make Harry her willing sex slave for the rest of his life.
Right, well, I need some of that. So I think that, yes, they called the bluff, and as Harry put it, that there'd been a lot of talk. So obviously they had been trying to ease their way out of the situation. And I do think, and I don't know that this is even a criticism, that obviously they did envision a half-in, half-out scenario in that what they ended up with was less than what they expected. They didn't expect to lose their HRHs. They didn't expect Harry to step back from his military honours. And I assume they were told to leave the country. Or was that their plan and what they were always going to do? I don't know.
I don't think, I haven't given that too much thought, but I think now that you mentioned that, they would have had a better fallback plan than going and living in someone else's house for 6 months while they tried to find something else in America. Because if they had the plan to stay in Canada, one would imagine that they'd had a more permanent base in mind.
I mean, this is hardly the abdication. I mean, in that case, there was definitely, it was very well defined to say, you're either in or you're out. And if you're out, you absolutely have to leave the country and not come back.
Yes.
But in that case, the king couldn't operate with the spectre of someone there who was, quote unquote, the real king standing behind him. That was an untenable situation. So the Duke of Windsor had to go. I think that Meghan and Harry could have lived privately at Windsor and not taken part in the family quite so much. Obviously, that was not to be. I think that the firm felt slapped in the face and there was a certain amount of pushback from them and an anger from them. And they somewhat emotionally, perhaps, even though they don't display emotions, were very much either you're in or you're out. And if you're out, you're right in the doghouse, which is where, from their perspective, they are now.
Yes. Well, I know when they came back and they hadn't said anything, so the first night they came back and they went to the Royal Albert Hall and they just quietly walked in and they were given a standing ovation from everybody in the room. For me, that was a moment where I thought, oh my gosh, everyone's recognising just how much pressure has been heaped on this young couple, that it is unrelenting. I mean, things like Meghan's favourite vegetable causes slavery and violence when she served a friend avocado toast, and there's constant backwards and forwards and lying about the clothes that she wore and how much she paid for them, and people through the Sussex squad, God bless you girls and boys, would produce receipts showing that she'd modelled that outfit 4 years ago in Canada for something, and there was this constant having to, every time a story was put out, a positive story for Meghan, there'd be, all this negative stuff that would come out and they'd have to counteract that. She was funding terrorism through the Greenfall Towers project that she was working on. Like, it was just unrelenting. And I think there was a moment, and it's sad that they didn't get to parlay that into something where they could stay, but there was a moment of 24 hours where people were like, hey, we're really grateful you've come back, and, we recognise that you've had a terrible time of it, and then they just went, no, we're out of here.
But I feel that they've always had that support, and that we keep making, well, I do, keep putting the abuse of Meghan to the forefront of why they made this decision, when I think there's a lot of validity to the argument that Harry has wanted out for a long time and lacked the support to do it.
The 4 weddings and a funeral.
Oh, Hugh Grant.
Hugh Grant said Harry's had enough. The press tore his mother to shreds and chased her to death, and he's taking his wife before they kill her. Yeah,
well, I mean, obviously this wasn't Harry's first negative interaction with the press or his first anger with them, so this was very much a last straw, that if it hadn't been Meghan, would have perhaps been anyone that he ended up marrying.
I think the biggest shock for me out of all of this has just been the utter lies put out by royal reporters. Camilla Tominey, whatever her name is. I try very much not to read her stuff because I just want to throw something at the television when I do read her stuff, but, terrible lies and things that she makes up. Katie Hind, who says some just absolute filthy lies. Dickie Arbiter has just made stuff up.
Really? Oh, Dickie?
Oh, Dickie has said some terrible things, but at least his daughter Victoria calls him out on stuff. But honest to goodness, there are so many reporters out there who are clearly starved of getting any news and just make stuff up. And it's embarrassing. Like, I can't even believe that you went to university to come out and just make rubbish up. Like, why did you even bother doing that? Yeah. I mean, and when you're making it up, it doesn't have to be negative. You could have made up any story. I know. It's just,
So the one criticism which I don't know about is I can imagine her rubbing the staff the wrong way at the palace.
Absolutely. I can totally see that.
Well, my thought was basically, you think that it's very grand to live at the palace. When you actually get there, there's such a infrastructure and a bureaucracy behind literally everything that if you say, can I have a cup of tea, the butler's got to talk to the under butler and he's got to call the Lord Privy of the teapot, and it just goes on forever, and you maybe get that cup of tea next Tuesday. In the case of Meghan, she wasn't plucked from obscurity. This is someone who was independently wealthy, had a Hollywood-style personal assistant, and if you ask someone like that, you're very used to people snapping too. And I can imagine she expected the staff at the palace to act like her private staff would. And when you're a star, if you ring up your personal assistant at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, I want an elephant, they go African or Indian.
Absolutely.
And so I can see that maybe she was like, what? Realising that palace life is basically like living in a horrible hotel.
Well, yes, exactly. And very little to be done about it as well.
So I don't find it hard to imagine, not that she was a bitch, but that they decided she was a bitch based on what, in her mind, would be fairly sensible expectations of service.
And look, I've lived for brief periods amongst people who've either been English people or lived and worked in England, and it's generally the same story. Like in Australia, if you are a young go-getter, as they say, you'll be up at, sleeping until 6 o'clock would be a luxury, 6 a.m. You're up at 5:30, you've run your first 5 kilometres for the day, you've been on the phone to a couple of other people, and you're in a car by 6 o'clock in the morning, into work, getting cracking on stuff. I have worked with the biggest software company in the world, and I can tell you that certainly in Australia you came to work looking like you'd stepped off a fashion plate, and you were in the office at a very early time in the morning, and you were there till very late in the evening, and that was just expected. So to talk to people and stay with people in London, and they go, oh no, nobody comes into the office before 9 a.m.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I remember saying, with a friend of mine who worked for British Telecom, And she was saying the first morning meeting started at 9:30, and she said, I don't even bother going into work. I do it as a teleconference because we're all around the world. So she wouldn't leave the house until about 10:30 and get into the office, and she would have done her, would have gotten up at about 9, cleaned her teeth and sat down to do a teleconference at 9:30, and it was quite eye-opening to me. And I was like, well, do you stay there till all hours of the night? Oh, no, it's highly unlikely anyone's there past 6 o'clock. It's a very different ethos, and one could argue it's a much healthier way to live your life. But if you come from somewhere where hard work is seen as ensuring your rise in the meritocracy of the American capitalist system, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and busting out your yoga moves and then being on the phone at 5:45 saying, hey, I've been up for 45 minutes, can I get a green tea?
Yes.
And everyone's still asleep. That would be very hard, because you would be thinking, well, this is my routine and this is what I know ensures success, and I stay on top of things. I would think that...
it would be a cultural shock to go to England, but then there's a cultural shock between Kensington Palace and right across the street.
Oh,
so you're then in such an extreme environment. You can imagine they decided that she was quote-unquote difficult based on God knows what.
Yes, and I think... all the false arguments people made about the bare shoulders rule, which is actually not in existence. There is no such rule. But all these things that people say, well, she should have known that. Well, if the palace did their job and gave the information out, you can guarantee Meghan would have been on it, because everything that she's ever been involved with, all the charity groups and the things that she's involved, she does her research, she does her homework. Whatever you might think of her personally, which you don't actually have a right to because you don't know her personally, the people say she is a very hard worker and she knows what she's talking about. So I think there's a lot of room there for people to stir up memories of Wallace Simpson, or at least the memories of our mothers throwing darts at the eyeballs of Wallace Simpson in the cutout newspapers.
Yes.
There was a lot of hostility. There was a lot of hostility towards Camilla when she first came in. So there seems to be this need to create this angelic, almost virginal queen figure or princess figure in Catherine, and this need to create Meghan as sort of some usurper who wants to take away what? I don't understand.
Well, I think that's... We could talk about this all day, but I think we've got to touch on the rift, quote-unquote, with the Cambridges, which is pretty real.
Yes.
As you say, I would understand, look, Harry had a lane there where he was Mr. Military.
Absolutely.
You could rely on him to do Remembrance Day, to do certain things, and I understand from William's point of view to say, at least there was the two of us. When Queen Victoria died, at least there was, 12 of them or something to carry out engagements. He would say to Harry, really, it's just you and me, and now you've left me holding the baby. Like, that's a very big gap to fill, and I don't know who is Mr. Military now. We certainly can't wheel out the Duke of York for anything.
No, but I also feel like that's absolutely William's arrogance that he didn't step up, because there is film footage, very easy to find, of Harry taking time out when he was serving overseas to address the media and to say, back off Catherine, because she was pregnant, and saying, please, give her a break. Like, he came out and spoken out in support of his sister-in-law because he was a dutiful family man, and we heard bubkiss, nothing, zip, nada, from William in support of Meghan, and whether he liked her or not. His brother, who had constantly supported him and escorted Kate around and been there for his brother and been there at the events. I'm not saying it has to be quid pro quo, but what did William expect of Harry to do? Once he'd married her, he should have come out and supported his brother, because otherwise it can only look as though he wants her to leave.
If it were the case, which is very believable, that the courtiers decided that Meghan, being an actress, was not suitable. And behind the scenes, did they call her Harry Showgirl? I have no problem in believing they did that.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure they did.
And if they got into William's ear and said, listen, this girl, quote unquote, is not suitable, one of the stories is that the rift began when William came to Harry and said, you need to be sure about this girl, and calling her this girl annoyed Harry, and that was the start of the whole rift. I don't know if that was the starting point, but things had cooled. But I know what you're saying, that it isn't a Sussex versus Cambridge thing, and I think pitting the Duchesses against each other as competitive or whatever doesn't make any sense. Kate invited her to Wimbledon, and then the next year did it again, and they'd obviously at least set up that as a tradition that they would go together annually and have a girl date and go, and they seemed to chat amicably. And I do think that at one of those last appearances things had cooled, but I do think when you actually stand back, how much are you supposed to support your sister-in-law? Like, what can you do if the boys are now arguing? I'm not going to go behind my husband's back to my sister-in-law. So if you're not fighting, you would, as the wife in either case, have the sense to stay right out of it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But I don't think, from William's point of view, if he wanted to create or to at least calm things down, to just say, look, my brother's a grown man, he can make his own choices. Yes. And certainly William has made some pretty poor choices, which we'll get to on another podcast when I have some actual...
We're going to talk about it, believe you me.
We're going to talk about it. But you support your siblings in public, as Harry always has, because all that can be done after that is that, well, you were never there to support us when we needed you. And that's all that could ever be now, is that I was always there for you. And I can't even imagine that that Harry would be the kind of person that would throw that back in his face, because he's just not that kind of person from what I've seen in public. He conducts himself. But I think the people who believe that Meghan has somehow orchestrated all of this, and they say, oh, she's a narcissist, she always wants to be in the spotlight. Why would she do the thing that would have taken her away from the spotlight and hidden her away somewhere where we don't know what's going on? That doesn't tie in with this idea of being a narcissist.
Obviously, Harry negotiated this for some time and was trying to get to a solution, and basically thought he would drop this Instagram bomb and go, well, now it's out there, they have to deal with this. And then...
Well, the thing that I always thought was just staggering to me was that somehow it was wrong of them to spend money on restoring Frogmore Cottage so that people could live in it. And I'm thinking, it's not their property. They don't own it. The refurbishments were always having to be done on that property. And what did they want? Did they want the baby to live in a place that was run down? I
know, everyone's always held account for maintaining Crown properties. That it would be ludicrous to let a piece of history like that fall into rack and ruin. You know, if you have a house that's full of $20 million worth of paintings, you need to keep the roof on it.
Yeah. And that Meghan and Harry said that they would pay back, and I'm thinking, they don't even own the property. Like
and they're still going to...
It would be like, renting a business and saying, well, you've put in $2 million worth of stuff to bring it up to standard to actually be a property that people could live in safely, and I'm going to give you $2 million on top of my rent to do that? That's just ludicrous. I mean...
And... there is a lot that you spend on these houses, and people go, oh, how many gold toilets do these people need?
Well...
But when you look at what's happening and the huge cost at Buckingham Palace, when you have a house that's entirely wood on the inside and has Edwardian wiring...
And let's not forget about all the various codes you have to follow, and the ways that you have to employ certain people. And this is a shout-out to my lovely friends Sharon and Paul, who live in Lewis, that live in a Tudor home. They have a piece of wood in one of the windows that they actually have to get a particular kind of framer to repair, because it's a piece of Tudor-era wood that needs to be replaced. They can't just get in any old person to do it.
No.
So anything that has to be done in these homes has to be repaired or restored in following a set of strict codes. So it's not as though it's like you or I have spent £2.7 million.
Which honestly, for a property of that scale, to ensure that it's safe and up to code, isn't... we've experienced...
They can't realise that money's not going back to Harry or Meghan.
No, but we've seen people spend that much money on a suburban house to turn it into a horrific eyesore.
We're not going to talk about that.
Oh, right, sorry.
Who
knows? We're not naming any names.
Do.
So we are here now. As to who orchestrated this, I believe that Harry did. I've read stories that Prince Charles plotted a scaled-down monarchy to edge them out. I've heard that he was devastated and that they pulled the rug out from under him. And these things can't all be true, so I don't even know where to start with that. No. But now we are here. We come to my Megxit criticism, which is, this hasn't fixed any of their problems, and it has made some of them worse. Number one, this isn't going to stop any of the abuse of her.
No.
This is not going to get them any less attention. At least at Windsor, they were safe. They were in, as much as it seems very bucolic there's cameras everywhere, and it's actually a militarily locked down situation where everybody, they can go out in their backyard and they're in a no-fly zone where they can't get photos taken from drones.
I agree, yes.
They had an entire spy infrastructure looking into threats to them through MI5 and 6. Now they're huddling in a house in Los Angeles, the home of the gun-toting racist, being America, I mean, not LA specifically, but also LA gets civil unrest. It can get very frightening there. They're relying on private security, albeit the gold standard of private security that all celebrities use. They are not safer. They're not better off financially.
Oh, no, I'd imagine they're much worse off.
And this isn't going to stop any of the abuse. And if anything, it's given them more fodder as to blame her for all of this stuff.
Well, I would say one thing is that they've taken Archie out of that environment. They've taken Archie out of a place where reporters can disguise the N-word as another word and put it on a front page of a newspaper. They've taken them away from a photograph of a couple leading a chimpanzee down a set of stairs and referencing Archie leaving hospital. They've got a culture around them, which, yes, we all know what's going on in Portland and all around America, but they've taken him to a place where he can see African American people succeeding and having a life and being featured in the news on a regular occasion. Oprah and her family and Gail and is she still with that guy? I can't remember.
Stedman.
Yes, is she still with him?
I assume so.
It's on and off and on and off. So I think there are, and I can't comment on this, with any sort of degree of understanding because I am a white person and I have that privilege, but I feel that if I was bringing a child, and I do have children in my life who are African, that to take them somewhere where they can see people who look like them, who have stories like theirs to tell, and that they can interact safely without being considered different or unusual, and that where the media is either disinterested or uninterested in them, has got to be a better thing than nightly news stories about how his mother... Oh, look, I'm not even going to go into the stories
I wouldn't
that
even
I've
want
read,
to dignify...
But, all the dreadful stories about his mother and about him, and to take him away from that, I think is... At the end of the day, as a parent, that's the thing that motivates you. And I think that kudos to Meghan for sticking with Harry on all of this, because she certainly didn't have to, and it would have been absolutely horrific. I don't care what people say when they say she would have known what she was getting into. No one has had this level of hatred level at them, apart from possibly the Duchess.
Even then,
Wallace, but
Wally. I mean, people absolutely hated her guts to an insult. Oh, maybe it's about the same actually.
But
because she didn't have to contend with Twitter. Also, could you imagine?
And the gutless people on Twitter, and you know who you are. You don't even have the decency or the bravery to say your real names and stand behind what you say.
No, absolutely.
So. If you feel the need to go over to Twitter, I would just automatically block those people because they're just cowards. They can't even have the courage of their own words to stand behind them.
And I guess thinking again of my lovely sister's analogy of the bikies next door, that, I mean, Harry basically said out loud in his first speech that they had no choice, and that sometimes the best choice for your family isn't exactly your dream come true, but it's the best you can do. Well, and that was to leave, I guess.
Those of us who are in Australia will have noted and I'm going to pull them up because I photographed them. I won't give any money to these women's magazines. No. It's complete made-up nonsense in them anyway. Yeah, when I was much younger and Diana was still alive, I would buy 2 or 3 of these magazines a week. And after she died, I thought, I funded that. In some small way, I funded that with my money that I had reporters wanting to chase after people, so I never bought another one again. But I had to photograph these two, which was the Women's Day magazine, which had Meghan on the front cover saying, "Meghan ruins royal wedding. Beatrice flees reception dinner in tears." And it's one of their typical montage photographs where they've taken a photograph of Meghan and then Eugenie in the background and Beatrice looking all terrified, and then a little photograph of the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Prince George saying Diana would have adored him. So those two images were juxtaposed on the Women's Day magazine. And new idea, Harry missing for 72 hours. Meghan forces Prince to flee. And there's Harry getting drunk, and they put a star over the top of him saying, "Out of control." And
oh, God.
Meghan looking terrified. And there's two photos, in fact, of Harry drinking in totally different outfits. So in those 72 hours that he was gone missing, he changed his clothes and continued to drink.
Well, we've had drinking sessions that have had wardrobe changes involved, so it's not like that's impossible.
So, even when she's away and hiding out, they're going to somehow make her responsible for destroying people's weddings.
Imagine the mental gymnastics of how she ruined the wedding.
Well, yes, especially since, you've got your kiddie fiddler uncle there, or father in her case.
Oh, my God. How could you ruin that wedding? That's such a good point.
Yes. So, people, you need to stop and think about the agenda of the people who are telling you these things on Twitter or Facebook. There's very few royal reporters out there that you can trust. They know what the truth is, but they're also being told to present a particular story because they're angry that Harry won't play the game. And
you need to get your information here from the speculation of two dumb bitches who have absolutely no idea.
Lord and Lady Bitch. So, what's next,
yes,
Joe?
look, I think we could go on about this all day. So
We
I think
could.
Let's draw a line under it that's enough for one day. And
give the girl a break.
Oh, God, yes. And now, I suppose the next thing which we're going to get into as it unfolds is the situation of they now need to earn money. Mm-hmm. And when they do, it's going to be he's cashing in on his position, tacky, this and that. No, nothing will be... There's no gracious way for a royal person to make money.
No.
Without it backfiring. Let's move on to the roundup. Wait till Grandpa puts his glasses on. We'll go for the story roundup. First headline. Daily Mail.
Oh, this should be good, listeners.
It's Piers Morgan's column.
Oh, dear God. I hate this man with the passion of 1,000 burning suns.
Well, I really liked Ricky Gervais's line.
Oh, tell me.
He was on a red carpet and someone said, if you could have dinner with anyone living or dead, who would it be? And he said, Piers Morgan dead.
Oh, bravo, Ricky.
Piers says, and keep in mind, this is all just the headline. Meghan and Harry's new book only confirms they're the world's most tone-deaf, hypocritical, narcissistic, deluded, whiny brats, and that most of the stories the lying press wrote about them were 100% true!
Oh, I wonder where he's going to go with his interpretation of the book.
Yes. Let me just recap everything sensible that was in that column. Okay, we good? Let's move on. Daily Mail again. Meghan Markle, again not her name, agrees to pay more than $67,000 in legal costs after losing the first round of her legal battle. So basically, the Duchess has had to pay legal fees for the hearing to strike out the names of her 5 female friends.
Okay.
She had 5 female friends who briefed People magazine about her, and she doesn't want them named and dragged through the process.
Fair enough.
And why would she?
Yes.
Daily Mail, because they are so on the Sussexes, they just cannot get off their dick.
Wasn't the Daily Mail the one of the organisations that Harry said they would no longer be cooperating with them in any way, shape,
Correct.
or form?
Well,
yes.
They're going to show them by making up 10 stories a day.
Yep.
The Markle Windsor Foundation? ? Mystery surrounds the name of Meghan and Harry's new charity as the couple changed Sussex Royals' title to MWX, but then withdraw the application just 9 minutes later. Now, I think they're speculating that the MWX is Markle Windsor.
I thought it was Archwell.
Well, that's the name, but that's not the name of the registered name of their charity foundation.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, they put in an application to change it to MWX and then withdrew it 9 minutes later, because I can only imagine that was just a typo and a mistake.
Yes. or that it conflicted with something else that was already in the database, because they would have come back and said, oh, there's actually, if there was another charity that name, it would have come back and said that.
I can't imagine the MWX stands for Markle Windsor anything, because I don't think she would be that keen to not leave the Markle name behind at this point.
Well, she can't. She's not a Windsor. She'd be...
a Mountbatten Windsor.
Yes, or a Sussex, because that's... The Beatrice and Eugenie's last name is York. So
They are, well, technically they don't have one as an HRH.
no, but when their school books and school
Yeah.
bags, they actually had Beatrice York and Eugenie.
I guess you would say Megan Sussex.
Yeah.
But in any case, I just think that was a computer snafu. I can't imagine that's what they meant. Daily Express.
Oh,
Prince Philip looks several decades younger in latest snaps. Now, the people in the comments of this story already beat me to it, but
okay.
several decades younger than what? The steam engine was one of my favourite ones. But they were...
we're big fans of Prince Philip here, people. We're not age shaming, but he hasn't looked his best of late.
But honestly, when you looked at him at that ceremony where he handed over the colonelship to Camilla, he did look quite surprisingly lifelike. I mean, you see these old guys and they look really grey and desiccated, and he doesn't. He looks a lifelike colour, and he does seem extremely robust for a 99-year-old guy.
Yes.
Fox News. I don't know. I don't even know why they would be interested. Queen Elizabeth wants Princes William and Harry to solve their royal feud like grown adults, sources claim. I bet she does, and don't we all? As I say, with everything we've recapped, I don't know who needs to forgive who, but...
William needs to stop being a cunt.
I see. Well, I'm glad we've sorted that one out. Hopefully that will happen soon. The Sun.
Oh, God.
Prince Harry slammed by ex-Transport Minister after urging air industry to go green despite job losses. Now, I knew this was going to happen. With this green travel thing, the only thing green you can do with travel is not travel. And now he's looking tone deaf because he's hitting... The one industry that's been absolutely gutted is the airlines.
Absolutely.
And now they're seeing Prince Harry pile on and say people shouldn't be flying, which from an environmental perspective makes sense. But I just feel like at this point, he needed to pick a non-contentious, unarguable issue. He should be talking about veterans or something that no one can find fault in. And so I think getting on to the transport industry is just... Not that he's not right or wrong or whatever, it's fraught with issues.
When did he comment on this? Was this something before COVID-19 happened, or is it in...
No, this is part of his new campaign for Travelalist. Travelalist, which I feel like is already a company.
Yeah.
That sounds like the name of something that already exists.
Yeah, it's a non-profit.
I'm thinking of Trivago.
Trivago, yes.
Yeah, so then they basically make out that he's someone who takes private jets and is a champagne Charlie who's now making things worse for people in the travel industry. And I don't know that that's valid, but he certainly has left himself open to that. He should have picked a better issue. So in conclusion, Catherine, I don't know how we've come down on the whole Megxit issue, except I think we're actually 100% agreeing.
Well, this is a turnout, listeners, as we often
Yes.
have a discussion about this. And
I wanted to attack it for the fun of it, but it's sort of not that funny at this point.
No, I think if the world situation has taught us anything in the last 6 months, and my goodness, I hope it has impacted some of you more positively about how we go forward from here, that we've just got to be kinder to each other. We've got to stop seeking to create these incredibly false dichotomies and abusive dichotomies of getting involved in people's lives and having negative opinions and criticising them for trying to find a place and carve out a place. I mean, it's not as though either Meghan or Harry can just walk into a local employment agency and get a job. And they've got to work in a very, very difficult, ancient system. And
they're going to get criticised either way. And now as I say, I don't think they had any choice, but they've not opened themselves up to criticism, but they're now just in a situation where...
They're going to get it anyway. And I think you've just got to live, to use a very hackneyed term, but I can't think of another one at the moment that would probably resonate with as many of you as this one was. But they've got to live their best blessed life, whatever that comes at them now. They've just got to take, because as so many of us know now, you never know what's around the corner. You don't know what horrible virus is about to get you and what you're left with afterwards. There's a much smaller but hopefully much richer pool of people and things that have been rubbed and made more important for you. So the things that you thought you needed in your life, you don't.
Yes.
Like endless travel and being seen at all the right places. But perhaps it's about, staying home with the people you love and being safe and doing what you can do from home.
Yes, indeed. Well, I guess that wraps us up. Please go to facebook.com/royalgospod, where you can hit the sign up button and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Like the page on Facebook and join the community where you can comment and possibly join Samantha Markle as someone that's been online bullied by Kate personally. Thanks for joining us, dear listener, and in these tough times, do keep your pecker up. And I guess that's it. Is that all we've got to say? I think so.
I think
all right.
that is.
Say goodbye, Katie.
Goodbye, Katie.
Brilliant.
Peace out, bitches.